Lots of common sense, I expect, from our guest, Conservative commentator Benedict Spence, joining me today. You're not so sure about that,
I thought you were going to leave with speaking of winter bugs, so actually that's much nicer. You know, just the virus that you can't quite get rid of.
There is that.
Yeah,
there is that.
You can't change
let's talk first of all about this political stunt that Labour is accusing Kemi Badenoch, the Tory leader, and indeed Robert Jenrick and
the 17 remaining Tory MPs.
Yes, exactly. I'll name that Tory MP in 8. Basically about this grooming gang inquiry. Is it a political stunt from Kemi Badenoch? I mean, the Labour got a fair point there. You lot were in office. You were in the cabinet, Kemi. And you didn't do anything about this and bringing in a new inquiry. So it's a bit rich to call for it now just because Elon Musk has said we should have one.
It really is a sign that Kemi Badenoch is not really a leader. She is a follower. She is following a news agenda. She's even following the person who she beat in the leadership contest, and that Robert Jenrick is the one coming out most strongly about this.
Yeah.
But both of them are downstream of a man in the United States on Twitter, Elon Musk, who is the one that's sort of mainly driving this. And of course that's come. That literally has actually arrived because of a discussion on Twitter that Musk simply became aware of, where the subject of grooming gangs was brought up. That's literally where this has come from, the free expression of a public forum. But as you say, 14 years of Tory government, this was a well-known thing that it was happening, and there was simply not that sort of animus from the Conservatives, from Kemi Badenoch, or to be fair, from Robert Jenrick at the time, to have that sort of inquiry. It's only now downstream.
Were they calling for it behind the scenes and nothing was happening? You know, I have a funny feeling they probably weren't.
I would probably say that when it comes to institutional child rape, it is the sort of thing that morally you should feel you are able to break ranks and say publicly.
I should think so. And look, Kemi Badenoch has been a very brave soul on a lot of these issues, on the woke issues, and speaking out, and often against, we understand, you know, the advice that she was given, you know, and cabinet collective responsibility and the like. So I've been very impressed with her on that front. I think that's why a lot of Tory members wanted to vote for her. Jenrick, I mean, we were discussing a lot on the show yesterday what Robert Jenrick had to say about, you know, we're importing these sort of alien cultures where people have a medieval attitude towards women. I mean, you know, I'm so glad that mainstream politicians are saying this stuff out loud now. I mean, Chris Phillips, the Shadow Home Secretary, was booed in Parliament. I mean, extraordinary. He was booed when he said, you know, it's not politicking, it's not a stunt to actually, you know, call for, you know, it's not far right, he said, to call for an inquiry.
Yeah, but again, can I be honest about this? Like, how long have they known that people like this are coming to the UK? It is not a surprise.
Most of it happened under
If anybody
under
has
Tories.
been to Pakistan or Algeria or many other parts of the world, you will see, and it's not actually just women, they have pretty backwards attitudes towards lots of things. You know, Jews, for instance. You know,
gay people,
exactly.
non-Muslims.
Yeah,
now,
it's not even just Muslim countries as well. You go to Latin America and you ask, you know, a lot of people, what are your thoughts on homosexuals? It's not exactly positive. And then when they go to the United States...
Has anyone been to Africa or asked people about that?
Well, talk to them about witchcraft in parts of Kenya. They still think it's a thing.
You know Pakistan very well, don't you? You've done a lot of work in Pakistan.
This is one of the things that really slightly irritates me about the whole conversation about grooming gangs is nobody's prepared to talk about it and then suddenly it's just Pakistanis. Pakistan is not just a country where everybody speaks the same language and they're all from the same ethnic group. Actually, there's one group that's massively overrepresented when it comes to these cases of child sex abuse, and that tends to be from people from Kashmir. So, you know, you're tarring people from, I don't know, Lahore or
Is that a particularly poor part?
Well, it's not a particularly great part, you know, in as much as there are particularly great parts in Pakistan. But, you know, you try and, you know, tar a Balochi or a Pashto with the same brush. They're not even the same cultures. They don't speak the same languages. And I have to say, it's a real reflection of the multicultural brigade. Britain is open and we tolerate all cultures. They wouldn't know that. They don't know the difference between these things. You try and ask them about, you know, details about life in Poland. They don't know these things. There is a complete lack of interest. There is just this sort of assumption that you can open the doors, invite everybody in, and within a couple of hours they'll be just like us because really everybody's a liberal. That's what they're just waiting to be.
That's why they've come here. No, that isn't why they've come here. That's interesting. And what do you make of Jess Phillips? You know, we've had, you know, horrible death threats to her. What Elon Musk wrote about her was absolutely appalling. She's not a rape genocide apologist who should be in jail. Also, anyone who uses the word genocide, unless you are talking about genocide, and no, it's not happening in Gaza either, is an idiot and really needs to stop doing it. That word should be... there are words that need to be used very specifically, like, in my view, far-right, genocide, racist.
Yeah.
If you use those words and just throw them around about anybody, they lose their meaning and their power, and that is a very dangerous thing, because what do you then do when you're talking about those actual things? You've lost those words. But Jess Phillips, of course, done lots of interviews like, oh, this is awful. It is terrible it's happened to her. Everything that Jess Phillips talks about is always about Jess Phillips' feelings.
Exactly.
So it is always... Now, she'd made the point, look, this is nothing compared to what these girls have gone through, blah, 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 blah. I get that. She's, but she did these incredibly long interviews. You'd think... I was watching one of them with my husband last night, and he was going, she's been on air for 10 minutes. She hasn't said anything.
Well, I did joke that this was Elon Musk. The worst thing that Elon Musk has actually done is give her an opportunity to talk about herself. And I know that's slightly mean, but at the same time, it's also true. As you say, she did point out that, yes, lots of people have suffered disproportionately. But it's not just Jess Phillips, actually, to be fair. It's people platforming her and asking her questions specifically about how do you feel? How has this affected you? Rather than, what is it you're doing, Minister? What is it that you're actually doing to improve the lives of these people?
Why is what Elon Musk says unfair about you? Yeah, but that's a particular issue, genuinely. It's a particular issue with women journalists asking women ministers, particularly Labour ministers. Everything is always, and how do you feel about being Chancellor? How do you feel about, walking into number 10? Yeah. How do you feel? It's always, how do you feel?
And here's the breakdown.
Ladies, get a grip.
They are also, whatever their background, they are now all middle class and very successful. And the
Jess Phillips has always been like, this is the biggest line. Jess Phillips, she's all blimey. She's absolutely plays this whole working
Victoria
class.
Derbyshire. Yeah. I don't know about these people. I don't know their backgrounds. But yes, Jess Phillips. But the point is, we're talking now about the feelings of middle-class, highly successful media and Politico women. Once again, we are ignoring and abandoning the working class.
By the way, these are all the people who also lost their minds over Me Too, and some director or A-list actor in Hollywood, touching someone's behind, and isn't it wonderful? Everyone's turned up at the Golden Globes wearing black dresses to make a point. I'm sorry, these people are idiots. They really are. Again, people don't care about white working class girls. We know that. How do we know that? Because they haven't done anything to protect white working class girls.
And you read some of the testimony.
That's the giveaway.
You read some of the testimony in the court notes, and you can see the disdain with which they are treated as if they are a lesser category of person. Yeah. Actually, the way that they were treated by law enforcement, by social workers, and again, it all goes. For me, the Labour movement was set up for the urban working class, for somebody to represent them. Yeah. And once
middle classes don't need to be represented. We're doing fine.
And the party is now that of the multicultural and the established middle class. Once again, the urban working class, no one cares when they are the ones that suffer.
Yeah,
they are expendable.
Absolutely. Let's talk about A&E. In crisis, people waiting 2 days, 50 hours plus, even in some hospitals. The usual crisis. What a surprise. No one sees it coming. I mean, it's just getting tiring. And now we're told, and the West Streeting says he's ashamed of how some patients are treated in NHS. And now we're told also that Britain needs to be worried about this HMPV virus. No, I hadn't heard of it either. Hadn't heard of rhinovirus before. We were told about that a couple of years ago. But about this one spreading in China. I mean, I literally don't care anymore. I'm genuinely, I'm with Boris Johnson in those WhatsApps. Let the bodies pile high. I don't care anymore. We're going to have to accept that human beings get ill sometimes and some of them die. We're going to have to get to grips with this idea and learn to live with it, I'm afraid.
I mean, sooner or later there will be an actual major pandemic for which there will need to be... they do come around every couple of centuries or so. But the main thing is...
But we'll have one sooner than that, given the madness what they're doing in these...
Oh, of course. But the main... I mean, we've had 8 almost reached that cusp in the last sort of 25 years. But... The main thing is here, it's sort of irrelevant. If you don't have a health service that is prepared for the fairly basic things that are predictable, what actual hope do you have? Shutting down society wouldn't work for this country, even if we had the Black Death, because we just wouldn't do it very well. That's the thing. It would be incompetent.
Well,
in the way
people don't know, because everyone, again, like the last lockdown, they expect to be able to sit at home with their laptop, but have other people make food for them and bring it to them, and then be cross about those people being in the street.
Yeah.
I mean, don't.
Pneumonic plague doesn't really work that way. I mean, it would be. It wouldn't be at all. But still, it's the fact that we can't get the basic things like flu. That, as we say, it comes around like clockwork.
But again, also, as Roy Lilly, our former NHS Trust chairman guest, pointed out, and again, it's something we've discussed so many times. If you compare our healthcare system to with similar-ish amounts of money, we are not off the scale in terms of like spending way less or anything than other European countries. And you look at their, the capacity. They keep their capacity around the 80% mark. Ours is over 90% all of the time. On the best, sunniest day in the summer, when everyone's as healthy as they can be, We are at like 95% capacity. We have no room for a major emergency of any sort whatsoever at any time. We have fewer, by a long way, fewer doctors, fewer nurses, fewer beds, fewer MRI scanners and everything for our population. And that is partly because we have this monolithic system. I don't think really anyone's going to be able to turn it. You can vaguely improve it. When they're talking about, our best bet is we're going to have, most people getting treated within 18 weeks. I mean, 4 months. Your GP says, yes, you may have cancer and you may well get treated or see a consultant at least within 4 months. And we're going to go, well done. First world country. Yeah. Well done. This should be a source of national shame.
It's no wonder that nobody can see the crisis coming if you have to wait sort of 6 months for a glaucoma appointment. I mean, it's supposed to be a first world system.
It's not.
And it's not. And it's far behind.
And it never will be.
No, and it won't. And if nothing else, even with all the money and the best will, it won't be because of the demographic changes in this country. The older the population gets, the more strain there is on the system. You can't keep it going.
Yeah, you old people. My parents, if you're watching or listening right now,
you just
sort it out.
Can you just emigrate somewhere?
Come on, yeah.
Give us net zero immigration by just leaving somewhere that has better health.
I do not mean that. I do not mean that. Do we mean? I don't know.
I do.
Yeah. I mean, you're kind of in Blade Runner territory, aren't you?
Yeah.
You're just like,
I have a very dystopian view of what's coming.
So I hate to tell you, but I'd be long gone.
Absolutely.
I could definitely feel at 56 I'm getting to the age where it's like I'm getting everything.
Absolutely everything.
But I think that is though, because I have a teenage daughter. There's a lot of parties and pub going, and 2 3-year-old nephews.
Yes.
And I mean, genuinely, and this lot at work, they're just disease vectors.
Yes. The huddled masses. The disgusting lesser people.
I'm talking about you. I'm the one who made them all ill in December. Everyone was ill over Christmas. I've come back with the same thing. Everyone's loving me at the moment. Really not. Let's talk about Donald Trump. I have to say, I was watching his press conference last night at Mar-a-Lago, and I just thought, I know this is terrible because so many things he said were just awful. And, whenever I've said, I think, if I were voting in the American election this time, well, in 2016 and 2020, I'd have gone for the Democrat candidate, holding my nose. But this time round, I think Kamala Harris was so beyond awful. Yeah. I thought Donald Trump, and also I think what the Democrats have done in the last few years is so beyond awful. They're insane on most really, really crucial things I care about. I think Donald Trump was the better bet. I never said I think he'll be a great president. I mean, I think he's a great man. Some of the things he said were really quite terrifying, let's be honest. But I have to say, I did think, yeah, it's going to be a fun 4-year ride, though, isn't it? Because we're stuck with Keir Starmer here. That's it. Always people thinking he's going to be out of office, and there's no mechanism for that. We've got him for 4 years, 4.5, probably more. It's going to be grim. He is so much more useless and awful and po-faced and just badly judging everything than we possibly thought he could be. We thought he'd be bad. He is so much worse and boring with it, which is an extraordinary combination. At least Donald Trump is going to be fun.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, why should we also be surprised that he might take this attitude, given that so much of the rest of the world has tacitly expressed acceptance of great powers deciding to encroach on other people's territory because it's in their national interest? Yeah. As much as the West tried to put sanctions on Russia, the rest of the world just went, nah, that's fine. And most of the rest of the country will do the same should China try to annex Taiwan. Yeah. So the United States is going, well, we're top dog anyway.
Well, this is it. I mean, let's play a little clip of what he had to say about Greenland and Panama, because this was extraordinary. And a reporter asked him about, taking control of, by the way, other countries. Let's hear what the reporter had to ask him and what Donald Trump had to say.
Can you assure the world that as you try to get control of these areas, you are not going to use military or economic coercion?
No.
And can you tell us a little bit about what your plan is? Are you going to negotiate a new treaty? Are you going to ask the Canadians to hold a vote? What is the strategy?
Yeah, I can't assure you. You're talking about Panama and Greenland. No, I can't assure you on either of those two. But I can say this. We need them for economic security. The Panama Canal was built for our military. I'm not going to commit to that now. It might be that you'll have to do something. Look, the Panama Canal is vital to our country. It's being operated by China. China.
China. You have to say China. Everyone has to now say China, not China. It is extraordinary. I mean, this is exactly the sort of Putin playbook, which is, well, this is, Russian sphere of influence. Russia needs a buffer zone. Russia needs to have control. I think we'll invade Ukraine. I mean, this is absolutely true. He also, by the way, warned of, I quite like his words, hell to pay. Hell will break out if the hostages in Gaza are not returned by Hamas. Do you know what? All for that. But he also talked about NATO members should have to pay 5% of their GDP, not the current 2%. Your reaction to all of that, Benedict?
The NATO thing is correct. NATO members should be spending more money, but there is an ulterior motive there. That's that a lot of that money will end up going into the pockets of US arms companies because they are the major suppliers to a lot of NATO countries, and European ones can't compete with their American counterparts. The rest of the world, as I say, has sort of taken its lead from Ukraine and what China is currently doing, not just with regards to Taiwan, but the rest of the South China Sea. And now I see the United States, this is my interpretation, is doing much the same, because it goes, well, the rest of the world will actually just accept when a great power does this. They may not like it, but what are they going to do? They can't actually stop it from happening.
Well, exactly. What is Denmark and any of Denmark's allies, presumably including us, going to do if he seizes Greenland?
And I think it's really worth noting that both China and Russia, actually, they're betting big on exploration of the Arctic Circle for natural resources, rare earth minerals, all that sort of thing. Greenland has all of those. It hasn't been properly tapped yet. Uranium is another big one. There are huge natural resources there to be taken, and I can understand why the US would consider this to be in its interest. You're also going to see this in Antarctica, but also when it comes to the Panama Canal, he's actually right. This is a national security issue for the United States, and as China sort of gets more interested in the affairs of the rest of the world, it is taking a great interest in the affairs of Latin America, and it's doing that as a ballast against what the US is doing in terms of trying to control the flow of trade in and out of the South China.
This is all about control of the seas.
Yeah.
This is all about control of minerals, of basic resources. This is about economic might, which boosts. You can't have military might without economic might, but you can't have economic might, particularly if you're America. I mean, control of the Pacific and control of the Atlantic, and particularly that route between the Atlantic and the Pacific through the Panama Canal.
But there is a lesson here for Britain, which is that Britain remains somehow still really well positioned on the global stage with some of the territories that we still have, to have a great deal of control over a lot of this. Be it Diego Garcia, be it the Falkland Islands, be it St Helena or Ascension, we still have access to so many parts of the world where there are these resources.
Are we still a player?
We could be if we wanted to be, but we have a government that seems dead set on giving these things away. And I will say this now. The Falkland Islands may seem a very long time, but it's 45 years ago. That will come into play for as long as the exploration of Antarctica continues. The Antarctic exploration trade treaty is up in, I think, 20 years' time, at which point all the major powers will go, drill, baby, drill. That will become prime real estate because you need somewhere for tankers to stop off en route to the Northern Hemisphere. If people don't think that will be a target for Argentina, backed maybe by China, they're living in cloud cuckoo land.
I tell you what, the next few years are going to be very lively, are they not? And again, this is why I think we need to be spending, as Donald Trump says, more on our defence spending, wherever we're getting the arms from. As long as they work, I'm not that bothered. By the way, some breaking news just while you were speaking, it's just been handed in to me. There's an interview, we mentioned Jess Phillips earlier on the grooming gangs and the rape gang scandal, and it was all about Jess in the interview they played out. She did with Sky last night. She also did one with the BBC. But in a podcast which she's recorded, which this released today, she just says nothing is off the table when dealing with the grooming gangs, including whether or not there could be an independent inquiry. She says a new victims panel is being set up by the government to hear about abuse by grooming gangs, and said nothing's off the table, including a new national inquiry if victims want one. But we know victims want one.
Yeah, I think that is simply trying to throw a little bit of bread into the water to try and calm people, saying, oh, don't worry, we're not completely...
in the vote today.
Yeah, this is so that they're going to be able to say to people who have a moral quandary about this, oh, well, we might, we're not ruling it out forever, but realistically...
We just don't want to do it on the vote today.
Yeah, but realistically, they should already be pushing ahead with these things. And also, I'm sorry, a victims panel, they'll listen to it, then they'll ignore it.
We've already heard from the victims.
Yeah, they've already ignored them once. What's this going to do? It's not going to change anything.
Again, I don't think victims want to get to talking. We know what happened to them. There have been court cases. Now let's do something about it and stop the next girls being victims as well. 11:25 is the time. Love to hear your thoughts on all of the stories we've got. Do you know the things we haven't got to today? The cost of Britain's borrowing hitting a 27-year high. Basically, I could have more spending cuts, or we're going to have more tax hikes to balance the books. But it's higher, the cost of borrowing, whether it's 10-year or 30-year girls, it's higher than it was after the Liz Truss mini-budget, which apparently broke the economy. Funny that, eh? It's almost like the world markets don't have much faith in the the chess prodigy and former economist, possibly, who knows when, Rachel Reeves and her ability to run our economy. Funny that, isn't it?